Hi, everyone, and welcome to Fresh from the Studio. We are excited today to have 3 artists that are representing Houston, Austin, and Denton. We'll get started in just about a minute, and we'll start with Veronica. Today, we'll hear each artist talk about their upcoming projects, a little bit about their background in 10-minute presentations. After all 3 artists have gone through their presentations, we will have a time for question and answers, comments, but during the presentations, please feel free to type them into the chat and we'll address them at the end. I'm gonna stop sharing screen so that Veronica can start.
Okay, so here we go. So, I'm Veronica Ibargüengoitia. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm Mexican and immigrant living in Denton, Texas. I'm an interdisciplinary artist. And I see myself and my work as a builder of connection. I migrated around 10 years ago to Houston, Texas, and that experience gave me the opportunity to connect with other migrants and local people and learn from their culture, their experience, and so on. But this migrational experience is not faced in the same way for every member, even in my family. Besides that, I have moved from 10 different houses in my life. So that is always a recalibration in myself. I have to be constant recalibrating. I have learned from that process to understand myself and understand others, how could we claim and adapt to new spaces. So my work previously was 2-dimensional, and it was very informed from my previous work in corporate interior design. It was levitating in architectural elements and interior spaces. And then I added, as you see in this slide, objects to my work. I started building them, and later on, through the pandemic years, I started building my canvases. And those came from images from people and friends worldwide that were sharing their window or their space with me. And I built these objects in a way of connecting myself to them and have a physical object in an intention to be closer to them. So on the right, you can see the source images from those friends that were sharing for me. And those in those years, I had this space for reflection and researching, and I was very intrigued of how we design and dwell in our spaces, how we physically build and mentally a home. I was really invested in the meaning of the objects and the subject in the space we use for living. And then that investigation evolved. I will show you in these 2 parts, last part, the 2 last installations I built. And this one is living among 22 boxes. Here I am investigating the migration, the uprooting and relocation of the human. I have discovered that the humans have been migrating since the Homo sapiens. So we are a migrational species. And I can assure every single person has moved at least once in their life. That's not new. So here is how the process of this relocation went for me. This is the last one. I had sorted out my things, which were important, which were making the cut, that were going to travel with me. The ones were released, stored, thrown away. And from this process, and I'm sure you felt it at some point, it's a lot of frustration, sadness, emptiness, solitude, anger, joy, excitement. And I touch every single one of them, all of them, sometimes more in one same day. So from that, I built this installation, which is living among 22 boxes. It's recycling my moving boxes from my previous relocation. Here I am working through my own experience. And the space is providing a sheltering container for me. The container now is containing me. And this whole process for me is to remember. I was talking to a psychologist, a specialist in migration patients, and she was sharing with me that it's really important to carry personal objects to a new place, and that functions as an anchor to the self. It helps you root in the new place, in the new city. And the way you organize things in your new house, it helps you also to link with your identity, with yourself, that at some point you lose in this process, because in a new city, you are no one. No one knows you. No one even can help you. No one knows your name. So that is really frustrating, and it arises a lot of feelings and emotions in the person. So I built furniture for my boxes, tables, chairs, a rock. I needed a rock in my space, windows. I have been living in this space, which is my studio, for the last 3 months. I write, not every day, but some days. And also, it's funny because at some points it gave me a lot of frustration. I forget that I have to have openings for the outlets, and at some point I forgot that I have to charge my computer, and they were blocked. So I had one day to search for them and have openings to be able to charge my computer again. So the project here is a dwelling exercise for me, and it's ongoing. The next one is a installation, immersive installation called Stranded. And here I'm exploring the flexibility of the migrant adapting to a new space in a different country. Here, the perspective is from the outsider, the one that do not belong, the one that is relentlessly adapting. So uprooting is the sensation of not being anchored to a place. And humans in their migrational routes throughout history face that feeling of uprooting. And also there's a desire and excitement for having this journey of migrating that releases endorphins in the humans. And it's the aim of doing that ordeal of migrating. So here I'm exploring the flexibility, the adaptation, the resilience. And why these writings? Because some of the countries, with the globalization and standardization of the alphabets, there was this need of use a Latinized version on the names. So what happens with people from countries that they don't have a Latinized alphabet? So when they migrate, they have to release that writing, and the identity given to a person is with their first label, their name. And that name is known at birth, at the beginning of their lives. So that's the first written form that identifies a person. So when they migrate, they release these names. So these names are from friends that shared with me, and countries, some examples of that are Korea, India, Nepal, Thailand, Japan, China, and so many more. So from those notes, I inscribed those names in ropes, and then I used those ropes to build like partitions from a home. So they became the layout of a home. And then this installation, as I mentioned, to get inside, you have to open these elastic strings that are the perimeter of it, the surrounding part of the home. And when you get in, you get to see the names, you get to live in that space. Every time you get in and out, you have to, it's an act of liberation, an act of flexibility, an act of adapting. So this enclosed space serves the purpose of a refuge for the self, where the name becomes a memory, a trace of writing. So that's it. Leslie, well, I just added this. I'm a member of a community of 30 artists, Latin artists from different parts of Latin America. We do several exhibitions. I have a social practice ongoing in Jinja, Uganda, and 2 upcoming exhibitions in Houston. One at the MAG and one here in Denton. Yeah. And well, that's it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Marsha.
Unmute first. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to thank everybody for this opportunity. Thank you, Women in Their Work, for an opportunity to share and support, and my fellow artists for being so generous. It's always an interesting proposition to speak about the work of our hands when it's our hands that usually do all of our talking. I want to introduce myself with a very early work. This piece is called The Gongo Stoop on Alameda Road here in Houston. And it's my first public work outside of my art making experiences, working as a project manager and artist in residence at the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. It became the first of many times I've had the privilege of doing community portraiture and working with members of the community to translate their own stories in their own hands. That piece was intended to be read from the outside to the center, and it celebrates the stoop as a community hearth and all those spaces where we gather. From beating an apron to the piecework of a quilt to the stories told in a kitchen. It also became the groundwork for collaborating with many architects, artists, engineers, and builders over the years that helped me sharpen my technical chops. A recent example is the Barbara Bush Literacy Plaza at Houston Public Library downtown. Most recently, Home Slice Pizza that opened up in Midtown. There have been several projects with school campuses that I've done since the pandemic, but I'm particularly proud of this one because it was all done virtually by emails and texts. This is a sketch from the art teacher who I believe had COVID at the time. The school had been closed since as far back as Hurricane Ike, and there was a lot of isolation during that time. But it was very gratifying because this was a unique opportunity for the parents to participate as well because the kids were at home. I approach community portraiture a lot like the navigation process that we had as children. It's the natural and man-made landmarks and architectural elements that define our communities so much more than street signs and maps. Oops. For example, I had lots of conversations at the beginning of a community project at Judson Robinson Park here in Pleasantville. It was a 7-8 month-long project, and I had a lot of intimate interactions with the staff there, and became increasingly evident that the keys that they used would be rendered obsolete once this project was over and the renovation was complete. And that key began to, represent constancy in the neighborhood, that the door would always be open. I love working on months-long projects because it allows me to meet people where they are. Some of those engagements were large and organized, and a lot of them were just incidental and intimate. I got lost many times in this insular neighborhood, and my North Star became a domed basketball court. It was the easiest thing to find, and I'd always have to start over when looking for something, about like it was when I first learned to drive in Houston. It became the anchor for the entire piece, along with a chain link fence motif right at eye level. I think of it as lacy security because it protects, but it doesn't exclude. I believe that in every historic neighborhood, it's the chain link fence that carries the drumbeat. It's the way I approach just about every project of this nature. Before that, Raymond, this sensory play structure at Emancipation Park, is the first such application of the chain link motif. During that really long, extensive renovation, I was privy to a lot of talk on the street, at the fence, and on the stoop, and it ran from excited anticipation to dread, actually, that the perception was, surely all of this effort and investment can't possibly be for us. After all, we've always been here. I thought it was important to have a lot of tension with static versus an effervescent type motif, absorbing and reflective. And this was the first time that I used orientation as an important role in the work. I embraced the sunrise and the sunset, not as a thing, but as a series of events, much like the evolution of neighborhoods. There's a crawl space underneath, and there's an African proverb that reads, "The moon moves slowly, but crosses the entire town." The north-south orientation of blood relations the following year was also important. I wanted to deal with the propagation of ideas and almost clannish associations. Inclusion of a glass block was meant to warp the impression of the person on the other side. And from a distance, the mirrors only appeared to be portals. Incidentally, the installation day was March the 24th of 2018, and I didn't realize that the March for Our Lives protest was going to be there. It was very overwhelming. Thousands and thousands of people just kept coming. This lady had popped out of the march to take a look, and she said to me that she couldn't just stay home and do nothing. She had to move. And she was very giggly, and she was so joyful to be there, even though the reason was tragic. She moved closer to my piece, and she was trying to put her hand through that hole, but then she yelled, "Oh my God, I can see myself." It was a simple statement, but it was so impactful in the meaning of the piece. 2 million people on that day, more than 2 million people were marching and compelled to move at the same time. And I thought, of course, back in 2008, what on earth could top that? 2018. Being compelled to move informs this piece in working with the Art League Houston. A short time after Raymond, the change was happening in historic neighborhoods all over Houston and gone from merely curious to staggering. The issue was inheritance or seizure. That's what everyone was asking. Are we moving on our own volition, or are we being moved? I named this piece Geode. So many houses were gutted and razed all around us, and most times all that was left was the stoop. Geode is not an intention to be a lamenting for ghosts, but a celebration of vitality, regardless of where we are. Inside again is the warped sensation of kaleidoscopic light, and outside is U-Haul orange, something that everybody recognizes, that sense of urgency. Installation day, I can't make this a little bigger, but I was really overwhelmed because the silence was deafening. There was nobody on the street, and I didn't see anyone except the installation team for about 8 hours. When the installation was done, I felt myself feeling just like that lady in the Heights. I couldn't go home when it was over, and I couldn't go anywhere else. It just happened to be June 8th of 2020, and George Floyd's body was within 2 miles of that sculpture. And because the streets were blocked, I had to park about a mile away, but I myself ended up walking for miles with hundreds and hundreds of people. Again, I was compelled to move. I think of a compulsion to move as like an eruption of our core, and the choice becomes what to keep and what to cull. With that proposition, my recent work is building up and building on what I salvage. I'm a 4th generation descendant of Louisiana transplants, and I'm really grateful for the photos of our homesteads like this one on Pierce Street in Houston. If it weren't for photos like these, I'd only have their vivid stories, because this is the only Pierce Street I know now. This year, I hope to complete archiving some pretty overwhelming volumes of family ephemera. I've been reaching out to various folks in fields like historic costumes to aid in my curation. As you can imagine, and as you've discussed, Veronica, the task is daunting and enlightening. I continue to iterate the chain link fins, and recently I've had some pretty exciting firing results. I've also been experimenting with adding volume and movement to what's typically the negative space in mosaic. I've been using supple and translucent grounds rather than a durable substrate. Additionally, the series that I call Discourse. It's essentially a documentation of conversations. And in the meantime, I collect series of stories in whatever form they come. And that work continues in the background. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marsha. And next up we have Mohini.
All right. Go ahead and share. And all right. Thank you to everyone here and to Women in Their Work for giving me and my fellow artists a space to be able to talk about what we've got going on. And so, yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about the current projects that I am working on, as well as a little bit of my background. So I, in my work and my art, really, really love exploring stories and storytelling. And most recently, I've been doing a lot of work involving how we can address play as adults, and what do our inner children need to hear, and what are they trying to tell us as we move through life, and how can we maybe do that with a bit more curiosity for the world around us, for the people in our lives. And so my current two sets of work are addressing that through playscapes and letters from a young artist. Letters from a Young Artist are, it's basically a play on the Letters to a Young Whatever series. So instead of an adult telling a child or a young adult, like, hey, this is what you should know, it's specifically my inner child letting me know, like, hey, this is what you need to know and what we should be listening to moving forward. And it's been a really, truly beautiful and healing practice for me. And the conversations that I get to have with little Mohini have been really, really enlightening, and something that I've been really interested in exploring is just the wisdom of children. They're so deeply wise for their very little years. So being able to listen to that small child inside of us is something really important to me. So this first piece here is called I'm Worthy of the Darkness Inside Me. They're in these little letters from a young artist. There's a lot, I use a lot of envelopes and like write whatever is coming up from that little Mohini that needs to be spoken out to the world. And sometimes it gets covered up. So I apologize. I don't, really know everything that she's saying here off the top of my head. But really the point is to be able to, just navigate through kind of what she's saying and also see what you can take from it. So another one that in that series that I've recently completed is called Follow the Tiny Voice. And this one says, run toward that tiny voice, tiny but oh so powerful, that says, hey Mo, I love you. And this one was really powerful for me because I feel as though we don't tell ourselves that we love ourselves enough, and having that come from a 5-year-old inside me was like really like, whoa, like, okay, I get to tell myself that I love myself. And I think everyone who gets to experience this piece gets to know that they are loved as well. So I like to use a lot of writing in my work and lettering. I've done that since I was a child making art. It's the conversations that happen in my head and with different characters that are, living within me, I think really lend themselves to that storytelling that I really, really enjoy, because it allows me and allows others to like drop themselves into the stories that we all create together. So so those are just a couple of those. And then this one is from the flip side of that, the Playscapes series that I'm working on. So Playscapes has a series of 4 characters, an alien, a witch, a jester, and a royal. That could be a king, queen, princess, whoever you want it to be. And these Playscapes, the goal is to allow people to drop into one of these characters and find themselves navigating the story that is within the piece. So this one is called What Are You Waiting For? It's really about this tension of like, life is only so long, and you never really know what's going to come up. And so why not just live and play in whoever you choose to be? Sometimes when I look at this piece, I decide to go in as a jester and, imagine myself like crawling up the little game pieces and playing with time. Or I can get really grounded in the royal and like live in the earth. And so, that's one of the pieces in this series. I've got another one here called Beauty in the Shadows. So a lot of my work is this like juxtaposition of play and, the darkness that is life that's within us that we get to really accept in not necessarily a heavy way. Like, it's what makes us human. And so there's, again, the 4 characters, and the point is to just really sit with the piece and the darkness and the textures and play in it, mentally play. So this one is called Silly Princess. And I actually drew on my niece for this one. I was babysitting her one day and she just kept calling me silly. She was like, "You're so silly." And she's 3 years old. So But it really got me thinking about, like, when I used to be called silly when I was younger, it wasn't necessarily a great thing. But she called me silly from a place of such joy. And I was like, that's a really interesting, use of the word coming from two wildly different places. So what would it mean for my princess character to be called silly? So this one's just an exploration of that and dealing with the joy and frustration of the word as you kind of navigate downward. And yeah, so that's, and then this one is called Watch Me Fly. And so this one embodies the jester character. So definitely an exploration of like that play, but also coming from a place of an adult listening to that inner child and seeing the darkness that she had gone through, but also loving on that and allowing her to play. So there's the watch me fly, watch me play, watch me kick your butt all day, sing-songy like love that comes from that inner child, but also like, okay, she was playing in some darkness. And so really, having that character there to just kind of play in has been really fun. So, and oh, sorry, there we go. And this is the last one. So this one's called Our Shadows Give Us Dimension. And this one doesn't necessarily have a character associated with it, but it's, for me, an interesting conversation of like, without darkness and light, like we don't really have any dimension. And so what does that look like in conversation? So this was just kind of what came out of the exploration of that question. And yeah, I was really excited to play around with the negative space in this as its own structure. So yeah, those are just a few of the pieces that I'm kind of working on and are complete from the series. But yeah, I've been just making things around those veins. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the space.
Thank you. Yes, thank all three of you for such thoughtful and elegant presentations. I definitely saw some connections in like very different work, the looks of the work, but it seems like home and where we live affects all of your works in some way. And I like the idea of play as well. But yeah, I wanted to open it up to questions, maybe questions the three of you have for each other to start it off.
Well, I'd like to say, Veronica, both of your pieces are delightful because I was just speaking with my son who's 27 and we were talking about toys and such. And I reminded him, like so many people say, well, why do I spend $100 on a toy when the kid just wants to play with the box? And I feel when someone asks me, what are the types of design that you appreciate? There's nothing better than a well-constructed box. Yeah. I receive things in the mail and I'm like, wow, I never thought of this, to think about how the crush-proof designs and things like that. And some places in Asia where actually the wheels of a train are actually compressed paper.
Mm.
I think that's the simplicity of it, and how generation after generation, it's like, why do we continue to talk to children in this way when clearly you can see it in their eyes that they know better?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And my studio is bigger like that, like from the back wall here, it's my stuff. So I had to build a small door to get to my things that are back there. So I'm playing every day. When I need something that is back there, I just squeeze down that door.
Very cool.
I love that so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love the both of your works. Like, they are so colorful and then well connected with that experience of being human. That I think it's something we have to explore a lot these days. That reconnection of the self and the humanness, and just get not so distracted with world things, right? With digital and so on, but just reconnect with the essence of who we are and how humans are living in this planet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I love both of your works so much, and I just felt so connected to a whole when thinking about both of your works. Like, the way that you guys position your pieces to be experienced on such a large scale by so many humans is just like, it's very inspiring to me. And like, I love how much, like, you can really resonate to, or I can really resonate to, just feeling like connected in like joy and sorrow of like moving, or well, really moving. Both of you guys had huge moving themes. I was thinking about it. So that was really special to be able to experience. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thank you, women and their work, because putting us together. And I asked this question to Diane, like, how do you figure it out? And it's like, now that we get to know better, it's like it makes sense completely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think we have a comment from Carrie. It says, Veronica, I have 37 bedrooms from a lifetime of constant moving across the globe, and I've never thought to make art around that thing. Exactly. And I really appreciate your work on this subject. The moving and dramatic, unnerving way it feels to relocate across the globe. Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a toll when you have to think of a move, and then, but I think the hardest part is the releasing, and then the readapting, and then the rebuilding yourself in a new place. Yeah, that's very intriguing for me. Yeah, those interactions with others and with the spaces. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marsha, you have the project of archiving your family's history, but there's still some release and what you choose to hold on to and what you don't. And now you're the keeper of that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's taken a very long time because it's emotional, number one. It can be very draining. It's also very time consuming, just how to curate those things.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing keeps coming up, and that is, the phrase, the pen is mightier than the sword. It's just like, no matter how I live my life, I'll always be able to go back to that 3rd grade report card. What do you mean I'm bossy? You know, I think what I have found is being able to give myself permission to look at things that I was never meant to see, first of all, and decide, you know, what stays or goes.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I've got a lot of things. I like to collect things. But there's one thing that if I misplace my paring knife that I use in my work, I go bananas. Very ugly, you know, unassuming. And I'm sure everybody's got that one tool that I don't want a bright, shiny new one. I want this one.
Yeah.
But the documentation has been very interesting to put together a chronology of my family's life. Seeing neighborhoods change and actually seeing 3rd Ward, which is such a historic neighborhood, and all the receipts that my folks kept, you know, and to think about how insular 3rd Ward was, even as close as it was to downtown. We really didn't need anything. The plumber was here, the pharmacy was here, the this, the that, the this, the that. And it's overwhelming. There's a beauty in it. And there's a beauty in the sadness, as you guys have talked about. Being the keeper is a good thing, you know, because it helps me to understand those emotions that layer all of us, to be able to see and read letters. I think the only part that seems to be missing for me sometimes is like, I can't see the letter that Big Mama sent. I can see the response, you know, to those letters, but it'd be interesting to see what came from this side, you know, of the state line, so to speak, between here and Louisiana and such.
We have another comment. This one's from April Brown. Veronica, I'm the daughter of an Air Force retiree, served in the Marine Corps, and then married a Marine. I believe many military families would resonate with the intersection of recalibrating in so many boxes. I have some that have not been unpacked from my life's journey.
Yeah, and me too. Like from my moving from Mexico to here, my husband will not be happy about this, but he has a box and it's still the way it is. And we have moved 4 more times and the box is like the way he put it, that way. He has not started out, nothing. So these kind of things happen. And then it's like, I will not move to a new place without my mug, my coffee mug, because that's my survival mode. Like I need my coffee in the morning. Everything can get misplaced, but I need my mug. So these kinds of things that make us humans, like, and then settle us, and then help us settle us and anchor in the new place and try to find some understanding in all the craziness. It's very intriguing for me. And that helps us build that spaces and build that home again from parts of things that are in boxes, right? Yeah, I'm still unpacking myself here in Denton, little by little.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Thank you to all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your time and patience.
I just wanted to say before we leave that on February 4th, in the gallery, we'll have our Talk About series with exhibiting artist Jay Walker and artists Alexis Hunter and Catherine Lee. It's 3 generations of sculptors talking about their practice, and it should be a nice conversation. Again, it's in the gallery. It's at 11:30 on February 4th. And then our next Fresh from the Studio is in collaboration with Print Austin, and it'll be on Thursday, February 16th. Thank you, Mohini, Veronica, and Marsha, for a really thoughtful and entertaining hour.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.